You're watching ABC10 Plus This Week.
Hello, I'm Laura Painter. You're watching ABC10 Plus This Week. Governor Gavin Newsom says he felt real shock and deep concern after the arrest of his former chief of staff, Dana Williamson, the latest in the case. And in dollars and cents, a judge has extended the deadline for AT&T customers affected by 2 data breaches to file claims in a $177 million class action settlement. Then we hit the back roads. John Bartell takes us snowmobiling near Lake Tahoe. ABC10 Plus This Week starts right now.
In his first public statements tonight, Governor Gavin Newsom says that he felt real shock and deep concern following the arrest of his former chief of staff last week. Dana Williamson is facing 23 federal charges, including fraud. There are a lot of new developments in this case involving Williamson's alleged co-conspirators. ABC10's Jeannie Nguyen is here to break down the alleged scandal shaking up the state capitol.
Alex, one of the co-conspirators, Sean McCluskey, just pled guilty for his role in the alleged scandal to siphon funds from a dormant campaign account belonging to Javier Becerra. McCluskey was Becerra's chief of staff at the time. The other person in this case, Greg Campbell, has reportedly closed down his lobbying business. I spoke with campaign experts on both sides of the aisle about what could happen next.
In federal court on Thursday, Sean McCluskey pled guilty for one count related to a scheme to steal funds from a dormant campaign account belonging to then U.S. Health and Human Services Secretary Javier Becerra. McCluskey, who was Becerra's chief of staff, Dana Williamson, and Greg Campbell are accused of conspiring to steal about $225,000 from Becerra's account.
And for him to say, well, I didn't really know what it was spending, it makes him look like either an out-of-touch leader or a participant.
Becerra is not accused of any wrongdoing in this case. He says the news is a gut punch. Republican strategist Tab Berg believes this will hurt his current run for governor.
Because that shows that either he's a laissez-faire leader who doesn't care that much about the money, or he's just so sloppy that we can't really trust him to be in charge of the public purse.
Democratic strategist Andrew Acosta believes Becerra still has a chance in this race.
This was nothing Becerra could do. The person doesn't work for him. He couldn't fire him today. It's sort of done and dusted for him. Now he just has to tell the truth and move on.
When it comes to how Becerra responded, Acosta says he would have preferred more emotion.
I would hope that he'd be, forceful and maybe even a little angry about this, because, these are people that have worked for him and, he had relationships with.
Alleged co-conspirator Campbell is a longtime lobbyist and owner of Campbell Strategy and Advocacy. He has reportedly closed down his business. On Thursday, his company's website shows it's no longer online. Campaign finance records with the state shows his business has been paid more than $3.3 million this year, with clients ranging from Amazon and TikTok to the city of Fresno, the Downtown Sacramento Partnership, Major League Baseball, and PG&E. Williamson was Governor Gavin Newsom's former chief of staff. While the alleged scheme began before she became the governor's chief of staff, in a new statement, Newsom says his first reaction was real shock and deep concern, adding she was placed on leave when he learned about the investigation and, quote, I wasn't privy to any of the details as it unfolded, and this is not the kind of thing I'm used to seeing in public service. I hold our team to very high standards of ethics and accountability, and I'm still processing the seriousness of the allegations.
Williamson has already pled not guilty to her 23 federal charges. Campbell is expected to enter a guilty plea next month. Alex.
All right, Jeannie, thank you for that update. And to continue this conversation, I want to go ahead and bring in Capitol Weekly editor-in-chief Rich Eisen. Rich, thank you so much for being here again with us so soon. Yeah. Now, we are already seeing rival candidates in the governor's race, like Antonio Villaraigosa, really leveraging this moment in ads. What potential impact do you think that this case could really have on Becerra's gubernatorial campaign, if any?
Well, I mean, it's not going to help it, that's for sure. I mean, when you're running to be the governor of the state of California, and especially what he's been running on is, that he's got these great bona fides as a leader of big things, the Department of Justice here in the state of California, the human
Health and Human Services Secretary.
And Human Services, thank you, I couldn't get it out. Those are big things. Those are, lots of employees, all that kind of thing. And then, your rivals are going to get to pound you and say, yeah, but you didn't know someone was stealing out of your account. I mean, it is going to have an impact, I think.
Questions that he's really had to answer this week. How could this case affect Governor Newsom's image and also a viability as a presidential candidate, if he does decide to, in fact, run both within California and nationally? Do you think it's going to have an impact?
I think it's going to depend a little bit on what, if anything else comes out that might, be tied to him. I think the real question is on judgment and vetting and all of those things, and I think he's going to get hammered on that a little bit. I think the thing that favors him, though, is there's still a pretty long runway between now and 2028.
Yeah.
So unless it gets demonstrably worse for him in terms of any connection to it, I think he'll probably still be okay.
Okay. And then last question here. With Governor Newsom's former chief of staff under investigation, as we've been talking about, and just yesterday, the Legislative Analyst Office, projected an $18 billion budget deficit here for California next year. Do you think that these issues are really going to follow Democrats? And do you think it's going to be a challenge for, California Democrats as, the primaries are coming up in 2026?
Affordability has been the word of the day around the Capitol for the last year or so. And and that's fine, but, press conferences don't lower grocery prices or, energy bills. They're going to have to really deliver. Now, they did a little bit of this last year, but absolutely. I mean, the pocketbook is going to drive a lot of voters, and, they're the majority party. They are going to be the ones held accountable if, there's only so many things they can do, in all fairness, but they are definitely going to have to make that the focal point again in this next legislative session.
All right, Rich, as always, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate it. And this is a story we will continue to follow.
The nonpartisan California Legislative Analyst Office predicts a budget shortfall of almost $18 billion, $5 billion more than anticipated. But how will the deficit change state spending? ABC 10 State Matters political reporter Jenny Huh has the details.
The legislature has to pass a budget that is in balance.
A balanced budget means California's revenue has to match what it spends. And right now, the Legislative Analyst's Office says the state can only get there by cutting spending, increasing revenue, or a combination of both.
If other states have surpluses and we have deficits, that's a spending issue that is Sacramento's fault.
Some Democrats agree, though they also cite President Trump and Washington's economic policies for overall higher costs.
There's wasteful government spending that's always been a problem, and it often takes a budget deficit for Sacramento to really take it seriously.
California Republicans say during budget discussions, they don't have a seat at the table.
And without any say from the minority Republican Party, that means they should get 100% of the blame for the deficit.
Republican Assemblymember David Tongipaw, who was on the Budget Committee, says it's about transparency and resource allocation, like on homelessness.
What programs work and what doesn't. But right now we have no idea where that money went and what positive benefit we got from it.
Republican State Senator Roger Nilo, vice chair of the Senate Budget Committee, agrees, saying without that insight, it's hard to pinpoint where to cut spending.
We haven't done the work that needs to be done to discover what needs to be done.
Cut the fraud rate on food stamps so that poor people get food assistance.
With new eligibility requirements for federal assistance programs like Medi-Cal, healthcare, and CalFresh, food stamps, California will have to make up for billions of dollars.
Food assistance, childcare, and funding for our schools, those things are not wasteful. We have to protect them.
Democrats are standing firm in those priorities. Assembly Speaker Robert Rivas writing in a statement, quote, "We must invest limited dollars on sustainable, vital essentials, healthcare, food aid, housing, education." But Republicans argue other priorities are excluded.
Public safety, the funding of Proposition 36, which was supported by almost 70% of the voters.
The legislature will discuss that budget when they reconvene for session in January and finalize it by June. Jenny Huh, ABC 10.
In tonight's Dollars and Cents, you now have more time to get your piece of a multi-million-dollar class action settlement involving 2 AT&T data breaches. While you could claim thousands of dollars in losses, a financial advisor I talked with says breaches like these put your personal information at risk.
You should be getting information from a law agency that will reach out and say, hey, your information was compromised and you can be part of the settlement. So it's important to look at your emails. It's also important to look at your postal mail.
A judge has extended the deadline to file a claim in the $177 million settlement over 2 AT&T data breaches. According to the settlement, the 2 incidents from March 30th and July 12th of last year resulted in customers' personal information being put on the dark web or illegally downloaded from a third-party cloud platform. The data includes names, addresses, phone numbers, email addresses, dates of birth, account passcodes, billing account numbers, and social security numbers. In the realm of dollars and cents, when we have data breaches like this, how can people be compromised? What should they be looking out for?
You want to make sure you do pay attention to your credit report. Are there any new lines of credit being opened in your name and in your identity?
You now have until December 18th to file a claim on the settlement website you see here. It's not entirely clear the exact amount you could get, but according to the settlement, people involved in the first incident can claim up to $5,000. If you're involved in the second incident, you can claim up to $2,500. Customers impacted by both could receive up to $7,500.
Data breaches are kind of like a reality that each of us are going to have to experience at some point. And I think going back to basics of changing passwords, changing PINs, monitoring your credit report to make sure that there's no new lines of credit being opened in your name and someone's not using your identity for nefarious purposes.
According to the settlement's website, a judge will decide whether to approve the settlement January 15th. But even if the settlement is approved, there could be appeals that delay payments. There are no estimates for when payments could go out. We have links to the settlement and where to file a claim on our website, ABC10.com. You can also stream all of our dollars and cents coverage on the free ABC10 Plus TV streaming app. Remember, your money questions have answers. Email me at lpainter@abc10.com.
The best way to protect a place, a wild area, is to get as wide a range of people seeing that area as possible.
For more than a century, this canyon, this riverbank, and these rock formations were off limits to the public, seen only by a handful of people. But today, that's all changed.
It's so cool to go down a place that literally was under reservoir for 100 years.
Momentum River Expeditions is among the very first companies to lead trips down the newly opened stretch of the Klamath River, a section that owner Pete Wallstrom has spent years fighting to restore and open to the public.
It is really important that people have access to this new stretch of river, economically and culturally, and for future projects like this.
On down the Klamath! Bring the salmon home!
On August 28, 2024, construction crews broke through the last of 4 hydroelectric dams on the Klamath River, which officially made it the largest dam removal project in the world. The dams were aging, inefficient, and had left the river struggling. Taking them down marked a historic moment for tribes, restoring over 400 miles of salmon habitat and reopening more than 2,200 acres of land that had once been a muddy lake bottom.
The river is fiercer. It is alive. It is running faster. It is swifter. The water is clearer and cleaner than I have ever seen it in my whole life.
Growing up in the Yurok tribe, Amy Bowers-Cordalis watched the river grow sick because of the dams and remembered a time when algae-filled waters caused a massive fish kill in the Klamath, which deeply affected her tribe's livelihood.
It was our life force, our lifeblood that united us, and it was sick for a really long time. And we felt that in a very deep way because we are the original stewards of the river. And it is our duty and our responsibility to the river to care for it.
Now an accomplished attorney and conservationist, Amy has spent her life fighting for the removal of the dams. With the river finally flowing free again, she says healing for these waters and the community can finally begin.
Through an Indigenous lens, it means that we are healing the whole ecosystem. So, all the way up to Upper Klamath Lake, to the tributaries that go into Upper Klamath Lake, all the way down to the ocean.
The river is healing, but it's not happening overnight. As you raft down the newly freed section of the Klamath, scars of the dam and the reservoir are still visible.
So it's pretty easy to tell, actually. Like, there's about 2 or 3 feet of dirt that would have been reservoir sediment.
The sediment that Momentum River guide Tyler Poley is talking about is the result of mud and muck that built up behind the dams and now blanket the landscape.
Well, so I mean, it's been under a lake for the last over 100 years.
As you float past what was once the lakeside community of Copco, a ghostly forest rises from the water, trees long submerged by dams a century ago. And above the river, abandoned boat docks hang from the hillside, a reminder of where the reservoir once stood and an eyesore adding to the decreased property values since dam removals.
I think it's been difficult and contentious. You know, this is such a big operation and a big project that's changing what's been established here for, like we've been saying, the last 100 years. So there's people on all different sides of this.
I don't really see much for life here today like I did 2 weeks ago when I was here.
And one resident who's not happy with the healing process is Lisa Mott.
How often do you go?
I try to go at least once a month, maybe a couple times a month, just depending on what they're doing.
Since the start of dam removals, Lisa has documented the progress on the Facebook page she started, Klamath River and Dam Removal.
My objective with the page is just to continue documenting, see what's going on, because obviously I don't know if you've been up to like Camp Creek, Jenny Creek, Beaver Creek, and then the footprints. Like what is actually going on right there in those footprints isn't necessarily being told.
It's time to take action.
Lisa isn't the only resident skeptical about the dam removal process. In my previous reporting, many locals have protested, filed lawsuits, and raised concerns about the impacts on wildlife. But their biggest worry centers on water quality and the massive amount of sediment that is now moving downstream from behind the old dams.
You're trying to solve a problem moving the sediment out, but yet you're creating another problem because you basically just moved the dirt and it's going to wash right back into what you're quote unquote restoring. So to me, that doesn't make sense.
I understand some confusion. You see equipment in the water and you think they're not supposed to be there. I would think that too if I didn't know what was going on.
Jenny Walgren's with Resource Environmental Solutions and says she's heard those worries.
What I've heard most recently is folks having a concern about construction and this material specifically going back down into the water. And that's why we're working in the in-water window, which is a dry period, and following it immediately by vegetation to stabilize that soil so it's not a rush of sediment coming.
Walgren says what people were seeing was equipment in the Jenny Creek area, a former salmon spawning habitat that they're trying to rehabilitate by removing debris.
We're moving things out of the water that may impede salmon coming upstream and spawn, do exactly what they need to do. We're sculpting different areas to give that floodplain connection.
As of November, most of the heavy equipment has left, and the focus now is on revegetation.
We still think in 20 years it's going to look better. In 50 years it's going to look better. We needed to get to a place where it's healthy, and then we need to get out of the way.
The fact of the matter is restoration takes time.
So this is an experimental wing to try to help encourage upstream migrating fish to find the auxiliary ladder.
To many people's surprise, salmon were spotted swimming into Oregon just weeks after the dams came down, a hopeful sign to the California Fish and Wildlife Department. But environmental supervisor Morgan Kneckley says one season of spawning data isn't enough to call it a full success just yet.
Definitive, no. I would say that it takes more time than that, right? Like again, we're talking about a 12 to 15 year time step to allow for multiple generations to return that had been produced in a dams out environment.
Since 2018, Morgan says salmon numbers have been below average, but he hopes dam removal and the department's brand new fish hatchery will help boost numbers. He also says, despite rumors, the state is not trucking in and planting fish upstream for photo ops or to increase numbers.
These fish are pioneers in terms of trying to find new habitats to distribute and lay their eggs in.
With the dams and diversion pipes now gone, water can flow freely through many areas that were inaccessible, revealing unique geology now visible to anyone with a paddle. After navigating the final stretch of whitewater, one last reminder of the dams remain, an old power station. Tyler says it'll stay in place as a symbol that no dam is truly permanent and that the river is always changing.
Now it's an amazing place, like with sites like this that you don't see in many other places in this area.
Rafting the Klamath River 1 year after dam removals. I'm John Bartel.
Welcome back in. I am Kevin John. Now, I think we can all agree that being a student athlete on the Division I level is challenging enough. But imagine balancing all of that while also battling a major health condition. For one UC Davis tennis player, she's persevered through all of the above by doing one simple thing: practicing gratitude. On the surface, Mika Ikamori looks like your ordinary Division I tennis player. But on the inside, she's dealing with a serious health condition.
I was diagnosed with epilepsy when I was 9 years old. Ever since then, I've been on medication day and night.
Despite the diagnosis, Mika maintains an attitude of gratitude.
I mean, it's been hard, but I feel very grateful to be where I am today, like college and playing tennis.
Thanks to modern medicine and innovative technology, Mika has been able to thrive despite her medical diagnosis.
I do get very small seizures, maybe just occasionally. So those still happen, but the severity is so much lower with the medication and the VNS.
Mika is in her third year on the UC Davis tennis team, and she's achieved quite a few awards in that time, including being named the Big West Conference Women's Tennis Player of the Week. A big reason Mika has sustained high levels of success, both on and off the court, she says is the support of her head coach, Sarah Jackson.
Well, Sarah has been so great to me. She is not just a coach, but a mom to me. She always has my back.
She's a strong young lady. She's a resilient young woman as well. Not once have I ever heard Mika use the fact that she has epilepsy as an excuse for anything.
And Mika is probably the last person who will feel sorry for herself.
Epilepsy is obviously very hard, but I never wanted to let it define me or control my life.
And her advice to others who may be going through a similar battle?
Everyone has their own stuff going on, but if you think about the bright side and try to be positive, and that's what I try to do, you will live a much happier life.
So just a very wise young lady. I told her, I was like, you can write a book of quotes just because she's so extraordinary, but she's also a really good student. This is just her third year and she's getting ready to graduate. Next year, she's going to be working towards a master's. She wants to get into therapy and help other people as well. So she's just an all-around bright student on and off the court.
Yeah.
When the snow falls at Lake Tahoe, the rip-roar of snowmobile engines resonates through the air in State Line, Nevada. Well, if you thought snowmobiling was an extreme motorsport only for the wild and crazy, think again.
You want to get that weight over onto the left. Yeah, just like that, a little further. Okay. Yeah, there you go. That's it.
Zachary Gordon's a manager at Tahoe Snowmobile and Tubing, which is a decades-old company, and he's made his living out of teaching people just like me how to snowmobile.
What, this tops out at 120 or?
Yeah, yep. Fully ungoverned, they'll do about 120 miles an hour.
Is that what we're gonna do today?
Probably not.
Okay.
Though these snowmobiles can go fast here at the groomed track at Lake Tahoe, these snowmobiles are governed, meaning the top speed is about 25 to 30 miles per hour.
You gotta be careful, believe it or not. They're a 500-pound machine, and if you come into these turns with not the right, weight distribution, they'll roll on you real easy.
Once you get the hang of driving these things, Zach likes to show off the local history, which he'll be passing by.
Back in the 1800s, the Pony Express came right through here. It was one of the mail stops.
Zach says before the casinos, the restaurants, and the tourism, this area was only visited by homesteaders and ranchers.
So originally, as you can see next to us here, this was used for cattle grazing and all that kind of stuff. And a lot of the original stuff is still here.
The snowmobile track is built on the Park family property, who for generations used this land to ranch cattle. Adjacent to the track, you can see the historic ranch-style home they built generations ago. Zach says the family still does a little ranching and land preservation in Nevada.
Everything's built except for this area. So what the Park family did was they deemed it for recreation only from here down.
Well, if snowmobiling didn't get your blood pumping, you might want to try the other attraction at Tahoe Snowmobile and Tubing.
We're gonna hit like what, Mach 2 or 3? Or?
Yeah, just let me know when you start getting scared and I'll pull the chute.
Okay, gotcha.
Oh my God!
The tubing hill was specially designed for racing. Multiple lanes allow sledders to get to the bottom of the hill in the fastest way possible. And if the snow starts to melt, Zach says he can make more with their state-of-the-art snow factory, which makes new snow overnight.
So this is just like a massive snow cone maker.
Basically, yes. Yep. Yeah, you can run it right in the summer and have snow cones all day long.
There is, however, a downside to the tubing hill. There's no chairlift to the top.
This is definitely the worst part about sledding right here.
Yeah.
Once you're all worn out, consider resting and munching on some s'mores in the romantic see-through snow globe igloo.
Very romantic. We're fully booked for Valentine's Day right now.
Well, here at Lake Tahoe, Snowmobile and Tubing, there's no business like snow business.
Snowmobiling at Lake Tahoe. I'm John Bartell. Hope to see you on the back roads.
Thanks so much for watching ABC 10 Plus this week. We're here 24/7 on the free ABC 10 Plus TV streaming app. You can get your local news and weather anytime, anywhere. I'm Laura Painter. Take care. I'll see you next time.